Supernatural Karma follows a woman who could only watch a brutal murder without taking action. The film opens by showing a woman named Caitlin who has just woken up after hearing loud noises coming from downstairs. Afraid that a burglar has broken into her house, Caitlin grabs anything she can use as a weapon. However, when she reaches the lower floor, she realizes that the source of the noise is actually her father, who is busy baking a birthday cake for her. Since childhood, Caitlin had always been awakened by the smell of cakes made by her mother on her birthdays. But after her mother passed away when Caitlin was still young, no one ever baked a cake for her anymore. Understanding how important her birthday is to her, her father decides to try baking a cake himself, even though he is not good at cooking. Caitlin is touched and thanks her father for the effort he made to bake a cake for her. They sit together, sharing laughter and stories while enjoying the cake made with love.
I love you. Fine. You can keep the key if it makes you feel better.
It's been years.
In the middle of this warm moment, a knock is heard at the door. Caitlin initially thinks it is her boyfriend, Josh, who might be coming to surprise her on her birthday. However, when the door is opened, two strange men, who turn out to be robbers, force their way into the house and attempt to steal their belongings. One of the robbers immediately punches Caitlin hard, knocking her to the floor helplessly. Seeing his daughter being hurt, Caitlin's father cannot accept it and tries to fight back to protect her, but his struggle ends tragically when one of the robbers shoots him without mercy. After the tragic incident, Caitlin and her father are left lying on the floor and are rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Despite rapid medical efforts, Caitlin's father cannot be saved and is pronounced dead due to the gunshot wound. Caitlin, who is also in critical condition after suffering a severe blow, appears to be on the brink of death, but thanks to the use of a pacemaker, the medical team manages to restart her heart. 9 months later, Caitlin is shown to have recovered and returned to good physical health. However, although she has healed physically, the emotional impact of the tragedy still lingers within her. Every week, Caitlin must attend therapy sessions with a psychologist named Jennifer to cope with the deep trauma caused by her father's death. During the sessions, Caitlin tries to express to Jennifer how heavy the loss of her father is and how the experience has changed her life. Although she tries to move on, the shadow of the tragedy continues to haunt her mind and is difficult to forget. Caitlin hopes that with the help of the psychologist, she can overcome her problems. After the therapy session ends, Caitlin rushes home. When she arrives, she is greeted by her boyfriend Josh, who is getting ready to go to work. Before Josh leaves, Caitlin shares good news they have been waiting for a long time, telling him that the police have finally managed to arrest the two perpetrators involved in her father's murder after 9 months of investigation and searching. Hearing the news, Josh feels happy and relieved.
I gotta head back into the office.
They caught the guys. I'm safe.
Term is geeks.
Bye.
Bye, I love you.
After Josh leaves for work, Caitlin decides to use her time to exercise, hoping that physical activity will help her feel better. While exercising outside, Caitlin realizes that the trauma she experienced still affects her daily life. Even though she tries to stay focused on her workout, she often feels anxious and alert when encountering new people. Her deep trauma makes it difficult for her to fully trust others, and she frequently worries that the people she meets might have bad intentions. While running in the park, Caitlin accidentally drops her water bottle. A man named Douglas approaches her with good intentions and helps pick up the bottle she dropped. Douglas's friendly smile and warm attitude make Caitlin feel slightly more comfortable, and for the first time in a long while, she does not feel the usual fear that arises when meeting a stranger. They briefly introduce themselves, and Caitlin begins to realize that not all strangers pose a threat. As Caitlin is about to leave, a mysterious man wearing a green jacket suddenly approaches Douglas and beats him mercilessly. The attack happens so fast that Caitlin can only stand frozen, unable to do anything, and the same goes for the people around them. Althea with her boyfriend Tony, and Curtis with his girlfriend Maria can only watch the assault in fear, too afraid to step closer or try to stop the violence. They are all worried that the mysterious man might be carrying a firearm that could threaten their lives if they try to help Douglas. Among the witnesses, a man named Nathan, who is also overwhelmed by fear, chooses to record the incident with his phone. In his mind, recording is the only thing he can do to provide evidence to the police about the brutal attack. Blow after blow is delivered without mercy until Douglas collapses. Panicking, Caitlin grabs Nathan's phone and calls the police, begging them to come to the location immediately. But unfortunately, because help arrives too late, Douglas is pronounced dead. After Douglas's death, all the witnesses who directly saw the incident are summoned to the police station for questioning.
Ordered it for you guys. You know? But she grabbed my arm, scared he might have a gun.
He could have had a gun.
A detective named Tom is assigned to investigate Douglas's death. Determined to uncover the truth behind the brutal attack, Detective Tom begins his investigation by gathering statements from each witness to form a clear picture of what really happened. As night falls, Caitlin is at home with her boyfriend Josh, watching the news on television about the brutal attack that occurred in the park earlier that day. The news reports that Douglas, who died in the incident, was known as a generous and kind-hearted man. He was actively involved in charitable activities in the city, including building shelters for people who had no place to live. Douglas's death leaves deep sorrow in the hearts of many, and news of his passing spreads widely. The news anchor invites Nathan to appear on the program to give clarification. Nathan is asked to explain why he chose to record the incident instead of trying to help Douglas, who desperately needed help at that moment, suggesting that if Nathan had acted, Douglas might not have met such a tragic fate. With a voice full of regret, Nathan explains that he felt powerless to help because he was afraid the mysterious man might be carrying a gun. Fear of an even greater risk made him decide to record the incident, hoping the footage could serve as crucial evidence for the police in capturing the attacker. Besides Nathan, Caitlin also feels deep regret for not being able to help Douglas during the tragic incident. Guilt continues to haunt her, and she feels the need to do something to honor Douglas. Therefore, that night, Caitlin decides to go to the park to attend a memorial event for Douglas. The event is held to honor his life and the many contributions he made to the community. The park that once witnessed Douglas's death is now filled with hundreds of people who come to pay their final respects. Upon arriving, Caitlin meets Althea, who has also come to attend the memorial. There, Althea begins to share her past story. Since losing her husband several years ago, her life has been filled with hardship. Althea lost her job, her house was repossessed, and she nearly lost all hope of living. In her lowest moment, Douglas was the one who helped her. Althea recounts how Douglas, with his kindness and generosity, allowed her to stay at a shelter he managed. Thanks to Douglas's help, Althea and her child Jessie were given a chance to start their lives over and rise from despair. While they are talking about Douglas's kindness, they are suddenly approached by a man named Lucas, who turns out to be Douglas's younger brother. Lucas, who initially assumes that Althea and Caitlin are Douglas's friends, thanks them for taking the time to attend the memorial and for remembering his brother.
Did you all know Doug? Well, the police said a witness came forward, so hopefully they catch the guy soon. I'm Lucas, his brother. I'm glad you came.
I'm sorry about your brother.
As everyone prays while holding candles as a symbol of respect, a strong gust of wind suddenly blows and extinguishes all the candles at once, startling Caitlin. After the memorial ends, Caitlin hurriedly returns home. Once there, she feels the heavy burden of guilt continuing to haunt her. In an effort to calm her anxiety, Caitlin asks Josh to go out for a walk. They decide to stop by a coffee shop not far from their home, hoping the relaxed atmosphere can help ease Caitlin's mind. However, while enjoying their coffee, Caitlin and Josh accidentally overhear a conversation between two unfamiliar men at the next table. The two men are talking about Nathan, the person who recorded the final moments of Douglas's death. One of them mentions that Nathan lives in an apartment located right next to the coffee shop. Hearing this information about Nathan's residence makes Caitlin uncomfortable, and a sudden bad feeling washes over her. She senses that something is wrong, as if something terrible is about to happen. Caitlin's unease deepens when she sees and hears the sound of a crow. Not long after, her premonition proves to be true. From the height of an apartment building, Nathan, the man mentioned by the two men in the cafe, suddenly jumps. His body crashes onto the ground right before Caitlin's eyes, leaving her frozen in shock. Before Caitlin loses consciousness, unable to bear witnessing Nathan's death, she briefly notices a mysterious figure dressed entirely in black near the apartment from which Nathan jumped.
Something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Seeing Caitlin faint, Josh quickly carries her back home. When Caitlin is half conscious, she vaguely sees a figure resembling Douglas approaching her, but it turns out not to be Douglas's ghost, rather Josh, checking on her condition.
Caitlin, how's your head feeling?
It's throbbing.
After calming down, Caitlin tells Josh what she saw before fainting, explaining that she noticed a man dressed all in black who might be responsible for Nathan's death. Caitlin is convinced that Nathan's death is highly unnatural. However, Josh tries to reassure her with the latest news from the police. They have investigated Nathan's death and found a letter left in his apartment, stating that Nathan felt deep regret for not having the courage to help Douglas during the brutal attack. The police conclude that Nathan committed suicide due to overwhelming guilt that haunted him since the day of Douglas's death. Hearing this, Caitlin feels confused. All the evidence does suggest that Nathan took his own life because of remorse. Yet Caitlin knows something is off, because at the moment of Nathan's death, she clearly saw a mysterious figure dressed in black, something that cannot simply be ignored. That night, Josh and Caitlin sit together in the living room watching the news, which once again discusses the tragic deaths of Nathan and Douglas. Some residents claim that Nathan's death was not a coincidence but part of karma, punishment for those who stood by and watched without taking any action to help Douglas. They believe Nathan was punished for choosing to record the incident instead of helping Douglas. Some even believe that this karma will not stop with Nathan, and that the other witnesses who failed to act will also meet the same gruesome fate. Seeing Caitlin becoming increasingly anxious and distressed by the news, Josh immediately turns off the television. He knows how deeply the events have affected Caitlin and fears that thoughts about karma will worsen her condition. Josh asks Caitlin to rest and go to bed early, reminding her that the next day she must go to the police station, as Detective Tom has scheduled a meeting to ask for her statement regarding Nathan's death.
It's not a coincidence, it's karma.
Come on, let's get some sleep. Okay.
The next day, Josh takes Caitlin to the police station. While waiting for Detective Tom to call her into his office, Caitlin unexpectedly runs into Lucas, who is also there. Lucas looks confused upon seeing Caitlin and wonders why she is at the police station. But before Caitlin can explain, Detective Tom arrives and asks her to enter his office.
Hi. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Hey, it's nice to meet you. Josh.
Kramer, you can come on back.
It turns out Caitlin is not the only one summoned, because inside Detective Tom's office, she sees the other witnesses to Douglas's death, including Althea, Tony, Curtis, and Maria, already in the room. Then suddenly Lucas enters the room with a confused expression when he sees Caitlin standing among the other witnesses. When Lucas realizes that Caitlin, whom he had always believed to be his brother's friend, is actually one of the eyewitnesses to the tragedy that took Douglas's life, his expression instantly changes. Anger and deep hatred are clearly visible on his face. Lucas becomes extremely frustrated and blames all of them for his brother's death. He demands that Detective Tom detain all the witnesses, but Detective Tom explains that although their lack of concern for Douglas is deeply regrettable, there is no law that legally requires someone to intervene in a violent situation. Detective Tom promises that he will capture Douglas's killer as soon as possible. After asking Lucas to leave, Detective Tom turns to the witnesses and informs them that the media has labeled them as villains. News about Douglas's death and their actions of standing by without helping has become a public spotlight, and many media outlets are trying to uncover the identities of the witnesses. Detective Tom warns them to remain alert, as there may be people who approach them with malicious intentions. Caitlin then informs both the witnesses and Detective Tom about Nathan's death, stating that she believes something about it is suspicious. She admits that she saw a man dressed entirely in black near Nathan before he jumped from the apartment. Although the witnesses appear uneasy hearing this, Detective Tom responds firmly, saying that Caitlin may have misinterpreted the situation, and he asks to speak with her privately after the meeting ends. Once the group session is over, Detective Tom brings Caitlin into another room to talk one-on-one. He begins by explaining that Josh had previously informed him about Caitlin's mental condition. Since her father's death, Caitlin has reportedly experienced hallucinations that make it difficult for her to distinguish between reality and imagination. The man dressed in black that Caitlin claims to have seen near Nathan could simply be a hallucination. Despite this, Caitlin insists that what she saw was real and not a hallucination. Because Detective Tom does not believe her, Caitlin chooses to leave.
There's no evidence anyone else was inside Nathan's apartment. I know you think you saw someone in Nathan's apartment.
And I know when I'm not, I promise.
Josh told me about your hallucinations.
That night, Caitlin tries to dig up information about Douglas on the internet. After searching through various sites, she discovers that Douglas shares the same birthday as her, August 27th. Caitlin begins to wonder whether this is merely a coincidence. Suddenly, she is startled when the ghost of Douglas appears right in front of her.
And this is just the beginning. Thanks to the public.
And you let me die, Caitlin.
Fortunately, Josh arrives in time and calms Caitlin, who is terrified.
Look, I know I could be a little... The face isn't saying we're fine.
Today, I ran into a street preacher and...
Later that night, while Caitlin is sleeping, she suddenly wakes up after hearing her phone ring. When she answers the mysterious call, she can only faintly hear someone asking for help. Unable to fall back asleep after the strange call, Caitlin decides to relax outside her house. While doing so, she once again hears a voice crying for help. Even though it is raining, Caitlin slowly follows the source of the sound. She also notices a crow and suddenly feels as if something unseen is pulling her body. Caitlin cries out for help, and one of her neighbors comes outside to ask what is happening. Caitlin tries to explain that she feels something pulling her, but the neighbor looks confused because he sees no one around her. Fortunately, Josh arrives and immediately calms Caitlin, who is clearly terrified. The next day, Caitlin decides to visit Jennifer, the psychologist who has been accompanying her through her difficult times. Caitlin feels that the events of the previous night were unnatural and begins to connect them to supernatural occurrences. Lately, she has been seeing things that cannot be explained, whether ghosts, crows, or mysterious shadows that continue to haunt her. Caitlin believes all of this may be happening because she once stood on the brink of death. After telling Jennifer everything, Caitlin hopes to receive a logical explanation. Jennifer explains that in some cases, people who have been near death do experience mystical events or become more sensitive to things that cannot be logically explained. However, from a medical perspective, such experiences are usually caused by trauma, stress, or psychological conditions that make the mind more vulnerable to unreal perceptions. Despite Jennifer's medical explanation, Caitlin feels unsatisfied and continues searching for deeper answers about the mystical events she has been experiencing. She begins researching karma and questions whether all the strange occurrences surrounding her are part of karmic consequences for not helping Douglas when he was in danger. Josh, aware that Caitlin is still obsessively trying to uncover what happened, asks her to stop and focus on her recovery. While browsing websites discussing karma, Caitlin suddenly remembers the man wearing a green jacket. His features become clearer in her memory, and Caitlin becomes convinced that he is the person who murdered Douglas. She immediately calls Detective Tom and provides information about the suspect's appearance.
I think I saw...
Red? We've got everyone working this case.
a necklace or a keychain or something.
After sharing this crucial detail, Caitlin grows curious about whether the other witnesses are experiencing similar supernatural events. She believes that if karma truly exists, then all the witnesses who stood by while Douglas was beaten to death should also be feeling its effects. Because of this, Caitlin decides to visit the witnesses one by one, starting with Curtis. When Caitlin asks Curtis whether he has experienced anything strange since Douglas's death, Curtis appears confused and does not answer right away. However, when Caitlin asks if he has ever seen Douglas's ghost after his death, Curtis's expression suddenly changes dramatically.
Seen anything weird?
I feel like shit, okay?
Douglas?
Instead of answering her question, Curtis angrily forces Caitlin out of his house. Shortly after Caitlin leaves, the electricity in Curtis's house suddenly goes out. Curtis heads down to the basement to restore the power. Suddenly, Curtis receives a call from Caitlin, who only wants to make sure that he is okay. Because Curtis is in the basement, the signal is very poor, causing their conversation to break up. Curtis is then shocked when the basement light suddenly shatters. Terrified, he tries to escape the house, but something unseen grabs him and prevents him from leaving. Meanwhile, Caitlin, increasingly worried because Curtis is no longer responding to her calls, decides to return to his house. Upon arriving, Caitlin searches throughout the house but cannot find him anywhere. After some time, she finally discovers Curtis's lifeless body in the basement. Caitlin immediately contacts the police, including Detective Tom, to report Curtis's death and urges them to investigate the case. News of Curtis's death spreads quickly and sparks widespread speculation across various media outlets. Many link the deaths of Nathan and Curtis to karma, believing they are punishments for allowing Douglas to be beaten to death without intervening. Not only the media, but also the public begins to believe that the witnesses are receiving karmic retribution. Feeling lost and unsure of what to do, Caitlin decides to go to church with Josh, hoping to find peace.
That he was describing and to Jerusalem.
While there, Caitlin notices Lucas, who is also attending the service. However, during the time at church, Caitlin is once again disturbed by the ghostly presence of Douglas, causing her to scream hysterically.
It's right in front of you.
Feeling embarrassed, Caitlin asks Josh to leave the church with her. However, Lucas follows them outside and asks what Caitlin was doing at the church. Caitlin then explains that she has been repeatedly disturbed by Douglas's ghost since his death, and that she came to the church hoping to find peace and calm her mind. Lucas then reveals that he has been experiencing Douglas's presence as well, in a similar way to Caitlin. Wherever he goes, especially in crowded places, Douglas's image constantly appears in his thoughts. At first, Lucas thought he was going crazy, but after consulting a doctor, he was told that such feelings are a common reaction after losing someone deeply loved. Before parting ways, Caitlin and Lucas exchange phone numbers so they can meet again another time.
I have seen things and...
You mean like Douglas's presence? I thought I was going crazy. And I think I've seen Doug. Glimpse at
At least let me give you my phone number.
When Caitlin arrives home, Josh asks her not to believe in mystical things. According to Josh, everything Caitlin is experiencing is the result of her troubled mind, and she simply needs proper rest to regain her mental balance. However, after hearing that Lucas is also experiencing similar encounters with Douglas's spirit, Caitlin becomes convinced that this is not merely a psychological disturbance. An argument breaks out between them because Josh still refuses to believe Caitlin's experiences, and as a result, Caitlin decides to leave the house and arrange a meeting with Lucas.
Look, babe, I love you.
But I'm telling you, this is different.
You went to Kurt's house that night, alone. Caitlin.
When they meet, Lucas takes Caitlin to see a project Douglas was working on before he died, a shelter construction project intended to help people without homes. As they walk around the site, Lucas finally asks a question that has been weighing heavily on his mind, asking why Caitlin did not help Douglas when he was being beaten. The question leaves Caitlin silent for a moment, struggling to explain, but eventually she apologizes and begins to share her dark past. Caitlin reveals that 9 months earlier her father was killed in an attack right in front of her eyes, an event that left her deeply traumatized and prone to anxiety and fear. When she saw Douglas being attacked, the memory of her father's death resurfaced in her mind, causing her to freeze and be unable to act. Hearing this, Lucas, who was initially angry at Caitlin, begins to forgive her.
Mostly for the...
They continue their conversation, moving on to deeper topics, such as the presence of spirits and how mystical experiences can psychologically affect a person. In the middle of their discussion, Caitlin suddenly remembers the moment when Curtis chased her out of his house after she asked whether he had seen Douglas's ghost. She starts to suspect that Curtis may not have been the only one who saw Douglas's spirit, and realizes she needs to dig deeper to find out whether the other witnesses are experiencing similar disturbances. Caitlin immediately contacts Maria, Althea, and Tony, inviting them to meet at a restaurant to discuss the matter. Caitlin begins the discussion by directly asking whether they have seen Douglas's ghost since his death, but the answers she receives are not what she hoped for, as all of them simultaneously state that they have neither seen nor felt anything related to Douglas's spirit.
Have you guys experienced anything weird?
I don't know what's going on with you two, but leave us out of it.
Have you felt something ominous, like
I can figure out a way to put this to rest.
On the way home, Caitlin receives a call from Detective Tom, who informs her that a man wearing a green jacket matching the description Caitlin previously gave has been found dead. Detective Tom asks Caitlin to come to the police station immediately to personally identify the man and confirm whether he is truly the one responsible for killing Douglas, Nathan, and Curtis. Caitlin states that she is certain the man is indeed the one who murdered Douglas, but her intuition tells her that he is not the one responsible for the deaths of Nathan and Curtis. After this discovery, Detective Tom gathers the remaining witnesses, Althea and Tony, at the police station, while Maria is unable to attend because she is busy with work. Detective Tom explains that the man in the green jacket who was found dead is named Mark Gaddis. According to criminal records, Mark is known as a violent offender who frequently committed assaults and robberies. He was discovered dead by a cleaning worker and appears to have died from an overdose. Detective Tom believes that Mark likely knew Douglas from the homeless shelter and that when Douglas was walking home, Mark followed him and attacked him in the park. Detective Tom then announces that the case is considered closed, as the main perpetrator behind the deaths of Douglas, Nathan, and Curtis has been identified. Therefore, the witnesses are no longer required to come to the police station to provide further statements. Althea and Tony are relieved and happy that everything seems to be over, but Caitlin does not share the same feeling, as she remains convinced that Mark is not the one who killed Nathan and Curtis.
It's our guy.
Why'd he kill my brother?
He had a long record: robbery, assault, possession.
So that's it? It's over. Who is he?
Mark Gaddis.
I don't think he killed Nathan and Kurt.
Please.
When Caitlin arrives home, she receives a call from Maria, who finally admits that she has also occasionally seen Douglas's ghost. Maria insists that the person responsible for the deaths of Nathan and Curtis is not Mark. Maria's words leave Caitlin confused, wondering how Maria could know such information. But before Caitlin can ask further, the call is suddenly disconnected.
Hello? It's Maria. Kurt and me. Find the guy who killed Douglas.
Worried about Maria's safety, Caitlin rushes to the salon where Maria works. Caitlin is horrified when she finds Maria dead with a gunshot wound to the head.
Maria?
Caitlin immediately reports Maria's death to Detective Tom. Detective Tom, who had previously seemed to support Caitlin, now begins to suspect her as the murderer. He believes Caitlin may be involved in the deaths of Maria, Nathan, and Curtis, especially since Caitlin has always been present near the scenes whenever a death occurred. Although there is no concrete evidence against Caitlin, the police decide to place surveillance on her, assigning someone to monitor her movements wherever she goes. Caitlin is also forbidden from contacting or meeting the remaining witnesses. After leaving the police station, as Caitlin gets into her car, someone suddenly attacks her from the back seat and covers her mouth. Caitlin loses consciousness, and when she wakes up, she finds herself in a dark, abandoned place. Confused and terrified, Caitlin wanders around the building and is shocked to discover Tony's lifeless body in one of the rooms. She also finds Althea nearby, weak and barely conscious. Near Althea's body, Caitlin notices a syringe filled with sedatives, realizing that the drugs are what caused Althea's weakened condition. Caitlin tries to wake Althea and urges her to escape together, but they suddenly hear approaching footsteps. Moments later, Lucas emerges from the darkness. Caitlin and Althea freeze as Lucas reveals that he is the mastermind behind all the deaths. The deaths of Nathan, Curtis, Maria, and Tony were all part of Lucas's plan. Before Maria was killed, Lucas had instructed her to call Caitlin and set up a situation that would lure Caitlin to the salon. By having Caitlin discover Maria's body, Lucas ensured that Detective Tom would suspect Caitlin as the killer. Lucas takes pleasure in how smoothly his plan has unfolded, manipulating everyone, including Caitlin. He also admits that he lied about seeing Douglas's ghost, using the story to manipulate Caitlin's mind and gain her trust so she would fall into his trap. Every ghostly vision Caitlin experienced was actually the result of her unstable mental state. Lucas blames all of them for not helping Douglas when Mark attacked him. In Lucas's view, they are all responsible for Douglas's death because they allowed him to lie helplessly without anyone stepping in to save him. Consumed by rage and overwhelming grief, Lucas chose to take their lives one by one as an act of revenge, revealing how his life was completely shattered after losing Douglas, the only person who had always been there for him. Lucas then tells the story of his painful life, explaining how since childhood he and Douglas had to survive on the streets after their parents abandoned them. They had no home, no food, and were forced to rely solely on each other to stay alive. As adults, Douglas, through sheer determination, built shelters for people in need because he did not want others to suffer the way they once had. However, after losing Douglas, Lucas no longer has any purpose in life. He becomes determined to kill Althea and Caitlin as an act of revenge.
I want to give up and check out of this miserable life. This is the gun you shot Maria with. Unselfish people who think they can do whatever they want.
Before he can do so, when Lucas lets his guard down, Althea, despite her weakened condition, uses the opportunity to stab Lucas's leg with a syringe. Althea urges Caitlin to escape and find help. Lucas, of course, does not let Caitlin go easily, and Caitlin must be extremely careful because Lucas is armed with a gun. A fierce struggle ensues, and in the end, Caitlin manages to overpower Lucas by seizing the firearm from him. After shooting Lucas and sending his body crashing down from the second floor, Caitlin immediately contacts the police for help. Detective Tom arrives shortly afterward and apologizes to Caitlin for accusing her of being the murderer.
You're a fighter.
The final scenes show Lucas lying weakly in a hospital bed, his body severely injured from the gunshot and the fall. Lucas suffers catastrophic injuries that result in total paralysis, but despite everything, he is still alive and fully conscious. While Lucas lies helpless in the hospital, Althea suddenly comes to visit him. She reveals a shocking truth. It was Althea who paid Mark to kill Douglas. She explains that while Douglas was sheltering her and her child at the homeless shelter, Douglas had sexually abused her several times. Douglas threatened to throw her out if she dared to speak publicly about it. At that time, Althea was completely broken and powerless, leaving her no choice but to stay silent in order to survive. It is revealed that Althea was not the only victim, as many other women had also been abused by Douglas. Althea admits that she deliberately went to the park on the day of the incident solely to witness Douglas's death and ensure that her plan succeeded. Now that her revenge has been fulfilled, Althea feels deeply satisfied. Meanwhile, Lucas, having faced the karma of his actions, must endure a bleak future, paralyzed for life, and sentenced to spend the rest of his days in prison for his crimes, and the story comes to an end.